to grief and depression. Learn more at betterhelp.com/public.
The GOP now runs the White House and Congress, and congressional Republicans are set to charge ahead with a plan to reshape government.
We're going to fix the border. We are going to get the economy humming again. We are going to restore our stature on the world stage.
I'm Meghna Chakrabarty, the Republican Party's legislative agenda and how it might impact you. That's coming up Monday on Point.
We know you've got a lot to do in a day, and sometimes it may not be easy to tune in at exactly the right time to catch WAER News. But WAER News is always available, wherever and whenever you are, without a paywall. Visit our website to use our live stream or catch up on local and national news, as well as podcasts on our website at WAER.org.
You're listening to 88.3 WAER Syracuse Public Media, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
SportsNite, your home for all SU sports talk.
Syracuse players, they don't find a player box out. They turn around and try to jump up and grab the ball. That's not rebounding. That's not boxing out. That's lazy. It is nowhere close to an overreaction to say that they can go 500 or better in ACC play.
I think there's something to be said about that specific phenomenon. 5 guys saying there's no backup plan. It's just us.
Breaking down everything from around the hill.
When you get doubled up on your shots and even one more to put a cherry on top, there's no possible way you can win a lacrosse game.
You can tell it just dissipates out of nowhere. And it's the in-game adjustments that have hurt Syracuse.
And giving hot takes along the way.
Naheem Cloud, they want him to be Jesse Edwards, and he just isn't.
Fran Brown is a home run hire for Syracuse.
Get your voice heard by calling in at 315-443-2011 or interact with us on social media at WAER Sports Talk. It's Sports Night, and it starts right now.
Welcome into Sports Night here on January 17th. Jonah Weintraub here with Shrikar Rajendran, taking you up until the top of the hour, talking all things SU athletics. And as you heard in that little intro that we got, we have a phone number you can call into if you want to chime in. 315-443-2011. Once again, that's 315-443-2011. And now let's get into perhaps the biggest storyline on the Hill this week. Syracuse men's basketball continues to struggle, falls to 2-4 in ACC play, 8-9 overall, with a blowout 85-61 loss to Louisville. Shrikar, what more is there to say at this point?
There's really nothing. I think if you gave me the chance to have one word to describe this game against Louisville, I would say it was lifeless. It was just overall flat on both ends of the floor. When we take a look at the offensive side of things, J.J. Starling obviously was put in a box. He couldn't get going at all. And no one ever really stepped up and said, hey, when J.J. Starling's not going, I can be that guy that, can step in and produce on any given day. And that's a big problem that extends beyond this Louisville game.
I think the big question is, you said, can they step up and be that guy? I think that's a question, not an opportunity. It's not I can step up and be this guy. It's more like can I? I think there's a level of doubt within the secondary players on this team that they can, take on that role when JJ is being honed in on. I mean, we've seen Lucas Taylor have some nice games here and there. I think he had 3 straight in double figures. Kyle Cuff has kind of come into his own. But
are any of those guys JJ Starling level? Absolutely not. And I think that's a bad question to be having when we're this far into ACC play.
And I don't even know if they need to be J.J. Starling level, but when J.J. has 4 points and 6 turnovers against one of the best teams in the ACC,
Mm-hmm.
you would hope that, wow, they're really keying in on him. Someone else has to be doing something. And then you look at the box score, even if you're just going by the numbers, and it's like, okay, Eddie Lampkin got his double-double. Congrats. And that's pretty easy for him to do when he's the only big man on this team that can give you competent minutes game in, game out. Jair Davis was all right. He made a couple of three-pointers.
But it kind of felt like Eddie Lampkin couldn't really get into his game because of how well Louisville was guarding the paint and the perimeter. As a matter of fact,
they were guarding everywhere.
Yeah, let's give some credit to Louisville while we're at it, because that defensive performance, in my eyes, was outstanding. You know, the way that they were closing out on shooters, limiting those quality looks, and also guarding the paint, making Eddie Lampkin get out of his element by forcing him up top. I mean, really well done. They had the right game plan. They executed it well.
Yeah, and it's like SU is already a poor offensive team from a shooting perspective. They can't shoot the three ball.
Yeah.
And they can't shoot free throws. Not that they got to the line that often, nor do they really, but again, everything just looked so out of sync, and it's like, how many times are we going to be after this each game saying the same thing? I was on the double overtime 2 or 3 days ago now for that game, and now that I've had some time to kind of grapple with it, it's like it didn't matter what dot I'm on, what double overtime I'm on. It probably could have been the same exact dialogue for all but those 2 games against GT and BC.
Right, it's a game we've seen before, and it's something that potentially we might have to start getting used to this season, because it doesn't look like anything's changing. And we go game to game. The blame more and more could go on Autry because of the game plans that he's been producing and the way this team has been prepared in their games, which is, not great. But you're going to be facing tougher teams than Louisville down the road. Especially, you got that Duke game coming up pretty soon. So when you look at this Louisville game, doesn't inspire much confidence, and it doesn't inspire much hope, I would say, in this team, vaulting above what their expectations were supposed to be.
I think the most difficult part to kind of come to terms with in terms of those expectations and trying to find any optimism or hope is the fact that these games haven't come with silver linings.
No, there hasn't been any.
And look, moral victories nobody wants those to be the wins that you have, but they're not even getting moral victories at this point.
Well, the closest thing you could say was a silver lining in this game was
Chris Bell, maybe?
Maybe. I was even going to say SU getting it to within 4, but then they just lost it again. So you can't really take anything away from that. So, yeah, I'm with you. I don't really think there is a silver lining, and you could harken back to other games and probably say the same thing.
Well, I guess one thing that was the same in those previous 2 wins before Louisville that changed as the Cardinals came into town was Donnie Freeman being out. He was out for a 3rd straight game, about a week now. Was listed as day-to-day, but day-to-day doesn't necessarily... That's a day. It's not week-to-week, but it's interesting because are we getting kind of a smokescreen here with how long Donnie is going to be out?
Well, let's see what Adrian Autry had to say. Maybe that'll give us some clues.
Kind of day-to-day. And that's still kind of day to day. I know we should know something very soon as far as where he's at. But I know he is improving. So that's again, I still don't have a timeline on that.
Well, no timeline. Because the thing is, you're gonna need Donnie Freeman back sooner than later. The amount of playmaking he does on both ends of the floor. That's a guy you want back as soon as possible, so no timeline there. Obviously, we'll let the injury situation play out as it is. But this team needs Donnie Freeman. Plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people who maybe think, oh, Donnie hasn't been the standard that we were expecting coming in. I would disagree with that. I think that when you get put next to Carmelo in every single conversation, it becomes a little impossible to reach those expectations as a true freshman.
A lot of pressure.
But, I mean... If you on a per game basis, he's leading the team in scoring among players that are eligible, 13 a game. He's right behind Eddie Lampkin and rebounding. And, I think what I've seen from him more than anything is he just seems to care. For a true freshman, he wants to win.
Well, I wouldn't say that other guys don't care because everyone's giving a conceded effort in every game. But I do see what you mean. There's a certain ferocity that Donnie Freeman plays with. And that ferocity can often lead to production. and that's a good thing. I wouldn't say it's effort, but I'd say it's more of a tenacity.
Yeah, I just like not necessarily a will to win, but a will to do the little things to win. It's like,
sure,
everyone wants to win, but not everyone wants to do what it takes to win. I think Donnie Freeman is a guy who plays well beyond his years, and I think that's the most impressive thing about him. His demeanor on the court seems more poised than that of some of the upperclassmen on this team at this point. Like, the body language has been an issue all season long, but you can kind of just see in that Louisville game how dejected everyone was. I mean, even after the game, when obviously it's right after the game, so they're going to be a little disappointed, but everyone just seemed like they had no answers. It seemed like they were stuck in the mud. And it all kind of goes back to that JJ factor.
Yeah.
You eliminate him from the equation, and what does SU have?
Well, for those who need a refresher, JJ Starling on Tuesday, 4 points, 6 turnovers. He shot 1 for 7 from the floor, 0 for 3 from behind the arc. And he's been 1 for 10 from 3 in his last 3 games. So, hasn't been pretty at all. And you've needed someone to step up and be that guy, as we alluded to earlier in the show.
And with Donnie out, it's even harder.
It's even harder. Because, as you mentioned, Donnie is that spark plug. Donnie Freeman is that guy that you could turn to and say, hey, we want to go on a run. We want to flip this momentum around. We want you on the court, and you're going to be the guy that brings us out of this hole that we're in. And when JJ's off, that's the guy that you want out there. So it is pretty disappointing when you look at this season and you kind of think about how Donnie Freeman will look, how he will develop throughout the year. It feels like we've been kind of robbed of seeing that because of this injury, and it really sucks. It really does.
Yeah, and it's like the guys that came back from last year, the few, JJ, he's been up to his expectations. Obviously, it's been well documented how Chris Bell, he was great against Louisville, but again, as a season on a whole, his shooting numbers have declined drastically.
Mm-hmm.
He's had some kind of weird run-ins with the coaching staff to the point where he's been starting and then off the bench to try to get that rhythm. He's gotten in his own head about things, and it seems like there's no consistent plan B for this team on offense. And Coach Autry talked about that after the game, that there is, he kind of discussed that plan B.
I would say shout out to Coach.
Plan B, we were trying to get the ball inside a little bit. They did a good job. They pushed Eddie out and Jair out. They really do a good job of working. I don't think we worked hard enough to get it in there. Obviously, Eddie, Jair, and JJ, those guys are a big part of what we do. We just couldn't get the ball inside. Whether it was a deflection or we just couldn't get them in the right position. Every time they got it, they may have been too far away from the basket, so they pushed us out. But typically, if JJ's not going, we try to go to those guys to kind of manufacture some points.
So that basically boils down to, all right, if JJ can't get it going, the least we can do is feed it inside to Eddie Lampkin and let him kind of facilitate, because he's very good at that. That's probably his best trait as a basketball player, is his vision, kind of that passing from the lower block, the elbow. But then Autry goes on to say Louisville took them out of that action too. So if plan A is not working, plan B is not working.
What is plan C? I think that is the question that we need to answer. What is plan C? But as you were mentioning, or as Autry was mentioning, I should say, if plan B was to kick the ball inside and get paint points, didn't happen. Louisville was ready. They were ready for it. Eddie Lampkin had only 2 points in the first half.
And I don't know. I just also am confused because it's like there's not any sets. There's no actions you could run to just get anyone a touch on the block.
Yeah.
Like, I know that a good defense will front and make it difficult to get it inside. But it takes like a concerted effort offensively to not be able to find anyone inside the paint. And part of it is that I'm sure shot fakes don't really mean that much to defenses playing Syracuse because it's not a good shooting team right now, or all season for that matter. But I don't buy that Syracuse just couldn't find a way to get the ball inside.
But Jonah, could this be another area where Syracuse could benefit from having a guy like Donnie Freeman back to open up the offense a little bit more on the paint as well?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps. I guess Donnie's game is not really back to the basket. Like like
It's
Eddie.
not, but I'm saying when we look at the offense as a whole and how it flows, how it moves, the rhythm, you would think Donnie would help in that regard, and that in turn would benefit the paint and would benefit a guy like Eddie Lampion, because it's easier to hone in on Eddie, when there's only so many guys out there that are a threat on the court to score, right? So I was thinking maybe Donnie Freeman, if he was brought back, that's another guy that you have to worry about in general.
Yeah, what puzzles me about the whole paint touches situation is it seems like the only method for getting it in the paint is kind of hoping that these pick and rolls work from the top of the key exclusively almost, where it's typically JJ in that action and he's getting a screen from one of the big men and they're just kind of ducking and diving, basketball 101. Is there not anything in the playbook to say, oh, hey, maybe set an elevator screen here, set a down screen or something, let someone put body on body and get someone else open? It seems like there's so much stagnation on the offensive side to the point where you can't even get touches on the block anymore.
Well, it's hard in this game because Louisville was also going under on screens. Whatever Syracuse tried to do...
Do you blame them for going under on screens?
I mean, yeah, but my point is Louisville was always ready for what Syracuse wanted to do, no matter what it was. They were ready for Plan B. They were ready for Plan A. They were ready for any... And they adjusted well throughout the game, too. That's a testament to Pat Kelsey and his staff. I just think whatever Syracuse had in the bag, Louisville was not surprised. They were ready. And when you game plan like that, to the extent that you're going to force your opponent to swim in deep waters to try and get a win, you could just keep pushing the pace. You can keep getting shots. Chucky Hepburn was shooting the lights out. Everything will come into fruition for you as an offense and as a team. So I think overall, when we look at what Louisville did, it all comes from the game plan. It all comes from what they decided to do going into this game.
I think, again, one of the head scratchers for me is you lose by 24. Being outcoached is not enough to lose by 24. There's so many factors that go into a blowout of that proportion. And at the very least, I think some Syracuse fans after the 2 wins expected things to be somewhat competitive. But it just never felt like it was. Even when SU drew the game close, like towards the 5-minute mark of the first half, it's like, okay, when's that Louisville run going to come? And I think that sense of pessimism around the team is, sure, probably justified, but also just more so a testament to how stagnant everything has been. That's the word I keep on going back to, but it just makes sense. I mean, even Elijah Moore, who we haven't touched on, was ice cold. He started again, missed a couple of shots, and was immediately pulled out. We talked about that on the double overtime. We had callers call in and say, why are you putting Elijah Moore on such a short leash? This team can't shoot. And he's one of the best shooters on the team. So if he's missing shots, then what is that saying?
Well, we want to hear from you folks out there. What were your thoughts on J.J. Starling and the Syracuse offense as a whole? Because me and Jonah do feel like it fell a bit flat. You can go ahead and call into the show at 315-443-2011. You can text us at 315-556-3929 or interact with us on Twitter at WAER Sports Talk. Jonah Weintraub and Shrikar Agendran on SportsNite talking Syracuse men's basketball. Jonah, I agree with you. We keep going back to these 3 words: flat, stagnant, lifeless. Those are the 3 words that we could use. And you know what? We'll throw in a 4th. We'll throw in anemic, because that's quite literally what Syracuse's offense looked like. And when we look at the defensive side too, Chucky Hepburn was going crazy, scorched earth in that game. Do you think it had anything to do with the defensive side of the ball, or was it just Chucky being Chucky?
Well, I mean, part of it is Chucky being Chucky, but at the same time, this is not something new for SU. It's the worst scoring defense in the ACC. They're allowing nearly 80 points a game. And I think sometimes the struggles of this defense have been undermined by the inability of any rhythm on offense. It's like, when offense is bad, it's easy to pay attention to that. But, I mean, even early in the season with those games against Lemoyne and Youngstown State, you could tell that, oh, goodness, this defense might have some struggles in ACC play. Shocker, it has. But again, it's so much of it just kind of goes back to the DNA, the makeup of this team, where it's just nothing has gelled, I want to say, which is not an excuse because Louisville, that entire team is transfers under a new head coach.
Yeah.
They were able to gel. They're one of the best teams in the ACC.
But there's a problem with Syracuse.
Yeah, but Syracuse, there's people saying that they need to be patient and take time. Well, that time has run out, and it ran out, frankly, a while ago. This team's not making the tournament.
Yeah.
So,
we can't. There's just no more trajectory, for this team, or no more clear-cut trajectory to the tournament. But I'd also say one of those reasons for this team not gelling is what this team has decided to do with Elijah Moore. I simply just don't know what's going on. 0 points in 17 minutes against Georgia Tech, 0 points in 13 minutes versus Boston College, and now 0 points in 6 minutes versus Louisville. He's getting less minutes. He's not producing. What's going on here? I mean, is there a lack of trust in Elijah Moore, or is it I don't have answers.
It's like this double-edged sword of you can acknowledge that freshmen will be freshmen and also say, hey, we can let freshmen play through their mistakes. But as you said, with the lid that's on the rim for him right now, it's and he's trying on defense enough. He's trying, and honestly, that's, as a freshman, that's all you can ask for. So the minutes are going down simply because he's not making shots. If that's all that's keeping him on the bench, then that just builds a deeper seated issue with kind of the nature of making mistakes on this team. And Coach Autry himself kind of gave a synopsis about Elijah Moore recently.
He had some open looks. They just didn't go in, and then, that's really it. I thought he had two or three open looks, and, they just didn't go in. I mean, again, he has to, stay with it. When he gets his opportunities, he has to keep shooting, and I think he passed up a couple, trying to put it on the floor. He has, he can shoot. He has to keep shooting. He has to stay confident.
Okay. You got to keep shooting and stay confident. Then why is he not getting any minutes? Why are his minutes dwindling every single game?
It's just it's a contrasting quote.
And he's a confident dude. Elijah Moore is he's
I think back to that
in a high school game, but
look, I think back to that Tennessee game. I think that was the best example of the potential that we were going to see from Elijah Moore. As you mentioned, confident, cool, knows how to find his shot, knows how to take the right shot in any situation, and he knows how to slice through a defense. That's confidence on supreme. But as the season goes on, again, I don't have an explanation for what happened. It does look like he's still confident. But, I mean, you go through shooting slumps. There's ebbs and flows in this game. Anything could have happened during that span. But as far as the potential, I still think it's still, it's clearly there. Elijah Moore is still really good, and he is a talented basketball player. But we're just not seeing it consistently. But again, potential, still very much there. There's upside.
And I'm sure that SU's coaching staff would say something along the lines of, potential doesn't win you basketball games. And right now, a guy like Kyle Cuff or Lucas Taylor gives you better chances of winning basketball games because of their defense. I'd argue that the hit or miss nature of their offensive performances makes them just as liable on that end as Elijah Moore could be on defense. It's you got to mix and match and play the hot hand, but seeing your minutes consistently go down and then starting against Louisville and then just getting yanked right after missing two good shots at that. One of them went all the way around and almost down, but I don't know. Doesn't scream confidence building to me, and that's something that, I guess we'll just see how it plays out tomorrow and going forward.
Right, and tomorrow Syracuse takes on Notre Dame, which is a better team than the record shows, I'd say. They played Duke close, 1 point loss to North Carolina, 1 point loss to NC State. Look, against premier, top ACC teams, this team can hang. So Notre Dame is no pushover here. And look, if Chucky Hepburn was making it rain on Syracuse with no real semblance of a defensive thwarting at any point, you're now going up against Braden Shrewsbury, who had a career high against your team last time, Tay Davis, Marcus Burton is coming back. Look, what's going to change? And how will Syracuse...
JJ wasn't at that first Notre Dame game.
Okay, that's something for the offensive side.
But neither was Marcus Burton.
Right. So it's on both sides, there's key players coming back, but it's only going to benefit each offense. And I don't think Syracuse will make up for the defensive lapses in this game more than Notre Dame will make up for the offensive lapses.
And also, Notre Dame can shoot the lights out. So if we saw a three-point defense against Louisville, they take more threes than anyone in the ACC, and their percentage is very low, but they lit up Syracuse from deep. If that's the case in that game, and they're like a 30% three-point shooting team, what is Notre Dame going to do to them?
It's all about perimeter defense. You know, Braden Shrewsbury had 25 points the last time these two teams played. I mean, there's no semblance of hope for me that Syracuse is going to magically fix the perimeter defense in one game, because this has been an issue since, that last time they played Notre Dame. So, look, again, I do feel like this game is a must-win, as is every game. But this one holds a little bit more consequence because this team is pretty much derailing right now, and they need to get back on track, and quick.
I mean, you get 2 games below 500 in ACC play this late in the season, and the water gets even hotter for a Syracuse team that is already dealing with plenty of hot water. And speaking of another struggling team on the Hill, Syracuse women's basketball, not playing its best ball either. We'll talk more about the Syracuse women and more coming up here on Sports Night after this quick break.
Hi, this is David Gans, host of the Grateful Dead Hour, the weekly audio postcard from the wide musical world of America's best-loved band. Join me for the Grateful Dead Hour Saturday afternoons at 5 on WAER, your local NPR station from Syracuse University.
Sugar magnolia, blossoms blooming, that's all empty and I don't care. So my baby down by the river said your red light shining down all over this hill land.
The mysteries of life explored each week. I'm Kathy Mattea. It's Mountain Stage, live performance radio from NPR.
Sunday from noon to 2 on 88.3 FM WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
Last week on Wait, Wait, actor Josh Gad explained why he felt he could write a memoir at the age of just 43.
And as it started to expand, it just felt like, okay, this may be a story worth telling. And then a publisher paid me, and I was like, okay, it is.
I'm Peter Sagal. Join us for the stories worth making fun of this week with special guest comedian Rose Matafeo. That's Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me from NPR.
Saturday morning at 11 on 88.3 FM WAER.
Welcome back into Sports Night. Alongside Jonah Weintraub, I'm Shrikar Agender, and we have you up here until 9 o'clock. If you want to make your voice heard while we talk about some Syracuse women's basketball, you can go ahead and call into the show at 315-443-2011. You can text us as well at 315-556-3929, or you can interact with us on Twitter at WAER Sports Talk. Look, Jonah, let's not beat around the bush. This women's basketball team bears a lot of similarities to this men's team in that, one, they are underperforming a little bit, but also, well, I guess there's 3 things. The second thing is they lost to Louisville as well, 72-62, but the third thing is they're also lacking that true secondary scorer. Georgia Woolley is there, and Georgia Woolley can score and produce on offense, but who else? Who else is it?
That's kind of been the story for this team all season long, and look, last night's game, 72-62 loss to a pretty solid Louisville team, a team that will be firmly in the tournament. They're not ranked right now, but don't be surprised if they are by the end of the season. They're one of those, upper third ACC teams in the best women's college basketball conference in the country. But I guess where they differ from the men's team is that these losses are to teams that they should be losing to based on the talent, the discrepancy there.
Sure, yeah, on paper.
It's like, yeah, on paper. So I guess they're more respectable losses too. They're not like these ACC losses apart from Notre Dame haven't been massive blowouts. They've hung with teams like they hung with Florida State, they hung with SMU, and probably should have beaten SMU if not for that buzzer beater. They hung enough with Georgia Tech, and they kind of hung with Louisville last night. It's just that ultimately this team can't pull away and kind of make an upset bid because they just lack the talent compared to these upper echelon or even mid ACC teams.
Well, Jonah, I'm not one to say that a loss is good, but when you put it that way, when you're losing to the teams that you're quote unquote, well, not supposed to be losing to, but it's a little more reasonable, it's not inherently a bad thing.
It's
in terms of program building and you're looking towards the future, it's not the worst thing in the world to lose the games that, you think you'll be losing, because eventually you will steal one that you should have lost, or you might lose one that you should have won. That'll happen. There's a lot of different mojos and different ways that the games could flow. It's any given day. But I do think it is a little bit concerning that we haven't seen that yet. That we haven't seen them steal a game that they were supposed to lose, right? Because you do want one of those wins on your resume as you go into another year. And based on how this team did last year, it has been a little bit disappointing in that facet.
I don't think anyone expected this team to really be nearly as good as last year's team, and that's kind of, that's the big discussion going into the year. You lose De'Asia Fair. How is everyone else going to step up? You have a lot of not a lot of roster turnover, but you lose Alyssa Latham. Georgia Woolley is thrust into this kind of Batman position with the other Robins around her on this team. But even going back to last night, a lot of the box score stats will kind of just tell you the story of the season, where Syracuse, a good rebounding team, was out-rebounded 40-29. It's 11 rebound difference against Louisville last night. And Louisville had 12 offensive rebounds in the first half. SU had 16 total in the entire game. Sorry, 16 in that half.
Yeah.
So, having the tone set against you instantly. But the big thing that sticks out to me is just this team doesn't have the shot-making capabilities of a team that can compete in the ACC.
Lit on the rim for both teams.
42%. They shot 42% from the field last night. And that was actually the best single-game field goal percentage for SU in an ACC game so far this season.
I'm sorry, 42%?
Yes, 42%.
Wow. Okay. That says something.
They shot like 30% against Notre Dame. The team doesn't have their best. I think if I have this written down here, Sophie Burrows is the only Cuse player above 30% from three in conference play.
Again, secondary scoring is very important. You need to find maybe about 2 or 3 players who you could point to and say, you're going to drop, however many points on any given night. Those are the players you need to carry the load offensively. If you only have arguably one of those players, it gets tough. The going gets very tough. And if it's just Sophie Burrows and Georgia Woolley out there, then oh boy.
And it gets tough for Woolley too. Woolley in ACC play, she's averaging about 15 points a game in conference play, which is, solid, but she's shooting 31% from the field. She's 7 of 26 from deep in ACC play. Defenses are keying in on her, and she's a great, great basketball player. But no one is going to be able to thrive when they are getting that much individual defensive attention, especially in a conference as potent as the ACC.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And coming into this year, we knew that however far Syracuse was going to go depended on what Georgia Woolley would do as the number one option, right? When De'Asia Fair left this team and when Georgia Woolley was kind of crowned as that next up, you want next up type of performances. You want next up type of play. And we just haven't gotten that so far. And that leaves you in a bit of, you're in murky waters at that point. It gets very tough for you as a basketball team to keep going and to keep, playing, keep producing on offense if there's only one playmaker out there. And even that one playmaker, high volume shooter. If Georgia Woolley has an off night, as any high volume shooter could have, who's going to be that person that steps up?
As of late, that's been Kyra Wood.
Sure, yeah.
Probably a disservice to her that we didn't mention her from the top, because she was great last night. 17, 9 rebounds.
Nearly a double-double.
3 steals. And since she came back from that injury, she's averaged 16, 9, and 2 steals over her last 3. And, as a big down low, that's something that Syracuse has needed all season long. Isabella Zhao is a veteran, solid center, but she's not going to get you a double-double every night. Syracuse needed that production, especially with Latham departing last year. And it's nice from a, team building perspective to see that Kyra Wood has stepped up as that secondary option. It's unfortunate that this is her senior season and there's, it's kind of more just like a last hurrah than a something to look forward to going forward long term. But if she keeps this pace up, she could vie for an ACC team at that point.
So keeping Kyra Wood's performance in mind, are we both in agreement that this was a better win by Louisville than a worse loss for Syracuse?
Yeah, I think that's
it's fair to say.
Yeah, that's definitely fair to say.
Especially when we bring the argument of who was better on paper, who came into this game with a little bit more momentum. I mean, Syracuse was coming off that win against Miami, but it does feel like, Syracuse lost, but you can't hang your head on it. It's not something that, you can feel horrible about.
It feels like a game that it feels like one of those games that if you were to put it into a computer simulator and have it spit out a score, it would spit out that score. It'd be
72-62.
72-62 Louisville. That team was good enough to win by double digits, but Syracuse was feisty enough and played well enough to keep it within a respectable margin. And, that's been the story of some of these games as of late, the Georgia Tech, Florida State, and again, yesterday with Louisville. So, this team doesn't leave you with a bad taste in your mouth like the men's team does after watching them perform.
Oh,
which,
sure.
I guess is pretty hard to do.
That's one way to put it, for sure.
It's hard to do considering the state of the men's team right now. But, kind of going back to it, it feels like this team is built very similarly to the men's team in kind of their roster construction.
Yeah. No, it does. And this team does go up against Boston College on Sunday. WAER will be on the coverage for that game. It's a noon game, so you can turn on your radios. Countdown to tip-off will be there at 11:30. And also, Jonah Weintraub, Shrikar Ajendran, talking Syracuse women's basketball and everything going down on the hardwood, men's basketball as well here on SportsNite. If you want to make your voice heard, make sure you call into the show, 315-443-2011. You can text us at 315-556-3929, or you can interact with us on Twitter at WAER Sports Talk. But two teams, Boston College and Notre Dame, looking at both of these matchups, it's big proving grounds for both teams, I'd say. I mentioned that Syracuse men's basketball could be in a must-win here against Notre Dame, as every game is. But when we look at this women's team, too, this is a game you got to win. And this is a game that could be had for you as well.
Yeah, and I think it's as close to a toss-up as you can kind of put in ACC play. I mean, BC 2-4 in ACC play, 11-8 overall. Really veteran team, which I think could be a problem for SU in the sense that they have 4 players that are all averaging between 10 to 13 points. So they've got the balance, and all 4 of those players are upperclassmen. But also this BC team has really gotten beaten up over the past couple of weeks. They've lost 4 of their last 5. They beat Miami yesterday, so that's in common with Syracuse. They beat Miami by 4, so both those teams with close wins over Miami. But the other 3 games that they had to play, or the other 4 games rather, 3 of them were against ranked opponents in that Tobacco Road region, UNC, Duke, and NC State. All ranked, all losses.
And veteran experience, as you mentioned, is very, very important, even in a college setting.
To bounce back from something like that,
Yeah.
If Syracuse had something like that, where they lose 4 out of 5, probably need to lean on those upperclassmen as well, obviously. But again, both these teams, not world beaters by any means.
No.
Not going to really compete.
But they could still put on a show.
No, not going to compete in the larger picture of the ACC. But thinking about ACC tournament seeding and being one of those teams that gets in and could possibly try to make some noise down the road, this game matters a ton. This is the difference between a 10 and an 11 seed, which doesn't seem that much, but at the end of the day, it could end up being a difference between a bye on the bracket if you think about it.
Right. And now we contrast that with the men's team, where say they beat Notre Dame, suddenly you're looking back on track against a team that could give you problems, right? We mentioned the three-point shooting and the perimeter shooting, all of that, and how the perimeter defense would have to be a lot better. Assume they do end up becoming better. They hold Braden Shrewsbury to, maybe hold him under double digits, which would be a big win in my mind for this team's defensive standing moving forward. But this is also a game where Syracuse could really prove that there's still some fire left in this team. There's still some fight there. They can give tough teams problems because, again, Notre Dame is a team that's hung with the best teams in the ACC. I'd be pretty hopeful coming out. If they win that game, they're looking pretty solid there too. So both teams are looking at situations where you win this game, we're talking about you again as a team that could gain some momentum down the stretch here.
And specifically with the women's team, they have a pretty soft middle of the ACC slate. You got this game at BC, then you take on number 21 North Carolina State. Then you've got games Clemson, Virginia, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, and Stanford. It's a 5-game stretch of unranked opponents. I think 3 on the road, 2 at home.
Yeah.
All games that could very well be winnable for SU. You win 4 out of 5 of those, you beat Boston College tomorrow, and suddenly, you're multiple games above 500 in the conference. It's so easy to get reactionary about these losses for all these teams that you can almost lose sight of the fact that this is a 20-game slate of conference play, and there's so much more action to be had. Especially when you've been playing teams close, or at least been competitive for a majority of the game, like SU has. Like, even going back earlier in the season, like I look at the Maryland game, a team that's 16-1, at number 8 in the country, and they only lost by 11 points and were competitive with the Terps for most of that game. So, I think that, these teams are similar to the men's and women's, but you got to be a lot more optimistic about the state of Coach Felicia Legette-Jack's squad.
Well, another coach that you can surely be optimistic about is the head coach of Syracuse football, Fran Brown, who took home a big coaching award. We're going to talk about that and a lot more coming up on SportsNite.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
You got great talent on this offense. You can't go dormant for an entire quarter. And
the Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
Joined by Georgia Tech play-by-play broadcaster Andy Demetra, Syracuse.com, football beat reporter Emily Laker.
Check out weekly interviews on YouTube and listen at waer.org or wherever you get your podcast.
Hello, I'm Larry Bousquet.
And I'm David Holstein, and we are 2 of the managing members of the Bousquet-Holstein Law Firm.
We're proud to support WAER because for both Bousquet-Holstein and WAER, giving back to the community is an integral part of who we are.
Just like WAER provides reliable news and entertainment for its listeners each day, our attorneys work to provide quality legal service to clients and support a variety of organizations that strengthen the fabric of our community.
Delve into the rich tapestry of acoustic-led folk, roots, and Americana music here on 88.3 FM WAER. Enjoy national and international acts, as well as local artists every Sunday with host Pete Thomas. Whether you're seeking the comfort of timeless classics or contemporary gems and music discovery, don't miss Common Threads, Sundays from 2 to 5, exclusively on 88.3 WAER, your local NPR station.
Welcome back to Sports Night here from our Ostrom Avenue studios in WAER studios themselves. I'm Jonah Weintraub, joined by Shrikar Rajendran for the final 15-ish minutes here on Sports Night, and going to pivot over to the Syracuse football team because the season might be over, but still getting some hardware. Specifically, head coach Fran Brown won a pair of coaching awards, the Paul Bear Bryant Award for Newcomer Coach of the Year, and was also honored with the 2024 Steve Spurrier Award, which honors the first-year head coach. So, obviously, both those awards kind of one and the same, getting the same point across, Shrikar, but, I mean, really just a testament to how well Fran Brown did in year one. And if you want to talk about Fran Brown's debut season at the helm of the Orange, feel free to chime in at 315-556-3929. And you can also text us. Sorry, that's the number you can text us at. The number you can call us at is 315-443-2011. Got my numbers mixed up right there. But no, the numbers that you can't get mixed up is 10 wins. SU's first 10-win season since 2018. Doing that all while beating 3 AP top 25 teams. And for all that hard work, Coach Brown getting some well-deserved recognition, I'd say.
Well, when we look at Fran Brown, the Dart mentality he's brought to this team and the grittiness he has brought to this team, it's been nothing short of spectacular. And I think this is a fantastic debut season for Fran Brown. When we look at those 3 top 25 teams that this Syracuse football squad beat, UNLV, back and forth affair, high octane offense, grittiness, staying in it. Georgia Tech, another gritty game, real battle in the trenches that Syracuse ended up winning. They got it done, and Fran Brown got that win early. That was an early ranked win in ACC play, no less. And then that Miami game. I mean, I think that is the pinnacle win of Fran Brown's coaching career or coaching season thus far.
Well, they're kind of the same.
Yeah.
If you go in head coaching career, they're just one season.
It's just one of the same. But again, the same themes. Grittiness, back and forth, never being out of a football game. Those are all qualities that you want out of your head coach. And when you see that in your debut season, that portends a really good future as a head coach. So I'm very impressed by what Fran Brown did this year, and I think he's more than deserving of those awards.
Well, the Bear Bryant Award, he'll be recognized on January 22nd, so about 5 days from now. And then on February 24th, that's when he'll head to Gainesville in Florida for Steve Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, which sounds like a fun place to be. I'm sure there'll be a lot of legendary coaches there.
Anytime you got gridiron in the name, that's probably a fantastic place for all football lovers.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that there's going to be some good barbecue there, too. And hey, with Coach Brown, there's been some good food at the Dome for some of these recruits, some of these transfer portal targets, like Amari Evans. Perfect segue into that. Amari Evans visiting Penn State. Well, he's visiting Syracuse from Penn State this weekend. And one of the reasons Coach Brown was so good as a first-year head coach was that utilization of the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle McCord is the obvious one, but Jackson Meeks came in through the portal. Zeed Haynes came in through the portal. You've had a load of people on defense coming in through the portal, and maybe not as active as some fans would want this year through that first portal window for SU. I believe they're in the bottom 3 of the transfer rankings in the ACC. Is that a cause for concern? And just kind of your opinion, Shrikar, what is that? Is that just a slow start to something that could probably turn around?
Jonah, I'm not too worried. I think Fran Brown has got this under control, and the reason is when Fran Brown was hired as SU's head coach officially, the common discourse was that good recruiter, that part of that facet of the game is already good. He's going to bring in recruits. He's got that on lock. The other facet that we had yet to discover was how good he'd be coaching a football team and leading these men into battle every week. And I think we've got our clear answer. He's meshed both in a perfect way. So this offseason, we're talking about what recruits Fran Brown will bring in. Will this team be the same as last year? I'd set those concerns to the side because Fran Brown will make it work. He will do what needs to be done. Now, Amari Evans is an intriguing receiver to bring in.
Really intriguing.
I think he could be really solid. He's also visiting Tennessee, Texas Tech, and Washington. Really good schools in their own right. But I also think that Syracuse offers a really good opportunity to get reps, and I think, he could ball no matter who's at quarterback. So I do think that the additions will be made. I do think changes will be made. And I think this team will be in good shape heading into next year.
Well, Evans, on campus this weekend, had 415 yards, 5 touchdowns last season with the Nittany Lions, one of their leading receivers. And I want to bring up a point. Jackson Meeks had 10 catches for less than 200 yards in his 3 years at Georgia, comes to Syracuse and becomes a 1,000-yard receiver with 7 scores. So if that's the type of change that you can make from Jackson Meeks, his transformation in 1 year at SU. A guy like Amari Evans, who's already proven in the Big Ten, that could be something scary.
Yeah, it does. And we know what Fran Brown has done with prior Big Ten quarterbacks. You look at Cal McCord. Pulling from the Big Ten is something that's always good, right? And Omari Evans is going to be no different. Because we think about Jackson Meeks, where would this SU team be without Jackson Meeks? He turned into an absolute game changer, especially down the stretch, got better as the season progressed. Omari Evans is going to come in and, he could be lethal in this offense. Again, no matter who is at quarterback, he could be lethal.
And I want to go back to those transfer portal rankings I alluded to, because I think that's kind of, the rankings are, I don't want to call them bogus. There's some validity to that. But ultimately, it's the same thing as high school recruiting, where it's a lot of quantity of recruits over quality of recruits, and then also focusing based on websites analysis and kind of, their vision for a player. I think at the end of the day, I trust Fran Brown and his talent evaluation to get the job done, that even if a guy might be a 3-star in the portal, if that's someone that Syracuse is looking at, I have faith that they believe that he'll be able to develop into a role. Because, again, with the Meeks thing or Zeed Haynes, the only, besides the two big recruits for Syracuse in the portal last year, McCord and Fadil Diggs. And those two lived up to their standard and more. Mm-hmm. And even the guys that were lower ranked in the portal were instant impact players for a good portion of the season for SU. And, Ricky Collins coming in, a pretty highly ranked transfer quarterback, coming from a school that has produced nothing but elite quarterbacks as of late in LSU. Mm-hmm. So I think there's reason to be excited and have optimism about this momentum going forward, even if a recruiting website begs to differ.
Jonah Weintraub and Shrikar Rajendran talking Syracuse football here on Sports Night. We have you up until 9 o'clock. It's currently 8:50 p.m., so if you have any last-minute questions, make sure to make your voices heard. You can call in 315-443-2011. You can text us at 315-556-3929, or you can still interact with us on Twitter at WAER Sports Talk. But you bring up a good point with LSU, Ricky Collins, a guy that's committed to Syracuse to play quarterback, tantalizing upside there, right? And Jaden Daniels, currently the Washington Commanders quarterback, he said, "I treat him like my little brother," referring to Ricky Collins, just seeing him be able to grow day in and day out. And when you get that from a star quarterback in the NFL.
And a Heisman winner at the college level.
Yeah, you're looking pretty good with Ricky Collins there.
I mean, I'm excited. I'm of the thought process that Ricky Collins is the clear starter going into next season.
Me too.
I don't see anyone in-house that can really compete with him. Just maybe I'll be proven wrong, and if so, I'll eat my words. But based on his attributes, even if he didn't get the playing time at LSU, I have a lot of faith in Ricky Collins, and it's easy to have faith in him when you're getting endorsements from the possible NFL Rookie of the Year on offense. Mm-hmm. So, just another one of those connections in the world of college football that just makes you a little bit, perks you up and gets you a little excited about the way that Syracuse could look next year.
I will say, though, I don't feel as secure as I did when Kyle McCord was named the starting quarterback for Syracuse. And that's fine.
Because he had big game experience. He had,
for sure,
2 years starting.
But I'm just saying we should maybe exercise a bit of patience with Ricky Collins. It may not come together week 1 because he hasn't had the experience that Kyle McCord has had, where he could just come in, plug and play week 1, he'll be producing right off the bat, right? But I think Ricky Collins, there's real upside there, in terms of using his leg, has a big arm. He has the arm talent, right? But it's okay if we don't see that week 1, right? That's okay. We shouldn't be panicking about it. Is my point here.
Yeah, and he'll be a multi-year guy. Ideally, he's not a one and done lease player like McCord was. So he has that time to develop. And that week 1 game next year, it's against Tennessee, a college football playoff team
in Atlanta.
This year. Chick-fil-A kickoff classic or whatever it's called. We love Chick-fil-A, but that could be a really difficult game to ask a quarterback to make his first career start, no matter how talented.
1,000%.
And also, love the Syracuse fan base. I think that they'll travel well, but it'll be close to a home game for Tennessee in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, just based off proximity, it'll be a home game for Tennessee, but it's also a potential college game day game. So a lot of eyes are going to be on this one. That is for sure, right?
I'm sure Syracuse fans would really, really enjoy if the first time they were ever on college game day was when it was in Atlanta and not on campus.
I mean, again, when we look at this season as a whole for Syracuse football, I'm just curious, what are your expectations just generally? Do you think that this team will have an encore performance of a 10-win season in a bowl game? And will it be better? Will it be worse?
I hate to be blunt about it, but the schedule is way more difficult.
Yeah.
SU benefited from a very favorable schedule this year. And honestly, the fact that they lost games to Stanford and BC and still managed to get 10 wins is probably the more impressive part of their season overall.
Do you think they finished the season ranked?
That's a good question. It depends. I think it depends on the times of their wins, like when they win their games. Because if they win later in the season against a ranked ACC opponent, I guess not ACC, but if they win against Notre Dame or something, then that is later in the season than if you win against Tennessee. And I mean, look, preseason rankings I don't know what Tennessee will be ranked in the preseason. Every single year,
presumably high.
Every single year, we're proving that those rankings don't mean anything. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't think Syracuse is ranked to start the preseason, nor do I really think that they deserve to be a lot of roster turnover. But that doesn't diminish anything that Fran Brown is doing. He's building something special here in the 3-1-5, and I think that we kind of, going back to those coaching awards, you have the foundation in place, and I think that's more than a lot of teams can say, and a lot of teams would prefer to have a base to build on than anything else.
Yeah, you go on the road to play Clemson, you go on the road to play Miami, on the road at Notre Dame. These are all really tough matchups, So I guess a side question here would be, and I'll answer this as well, you either win games or you look the part. And I would say that looking the part is enough, barring a drastic change in record. If this team stays afloat and they're anywhere between 8 to 10 wins and you look the part against really good teams, I'd say that trajectory is still going up. I still think you're in good shape. Now, if you lose those games, which could happen, and you just get flat out beat, that's a different story.
I guess it's just kind of scary that you're hinging on so much unknown. You had multiple starting DBs enter the transfer portal and leave. You like Marcellus Barnes, namely, Jaden Bellamy.
Mm-hmm.
You have all those seniors that really set the foundation this year gone. Not just McCord, but you have.
It'll be a completely different makeup, for sure.
And a lot of it is going to be on the shoulders of a guy like Ricky Collins. A lot of it's going to be on the shoulders of a guy like Yasin Willis, stepping up for LaQuint Allen if LaQuint Allen does end up going to the NFL. So I think it's reasonable to expect a step back, for sure.
Yeah.
But again, I think that this is a year in year two for Fran Brown where the results were never going to be as good as year one. They could prove me wrong, and I'd gladly accept that. But it's more about, as you said, building for the future and showing that you have the capability to build a program up and not just have a one-year wonder.
Right. It's all about a vision for the future, and I think that's where we're at with Fran Brown and Syracuse. When you get a big 10-win season like this is not the end-all be-all. This is just part of the plan. This is all part of what this team will look like down the road, what this team will look like on a game-to-game basis. These are short-term things versus long-term things. And I think it's good to always keep the big picture in mind. And look, if this team does not end up performing to the lofty expectations they've set for themselves this year, that's okay. Sometimes it's going to happen. A sophomore slump is not out of the question. But I do hope that they at least look competitive. That is my one, overarching message here. If this team looks competitive and they're winning games or losing games, you're still on the right trajectory.
Well, speaking of true competitor, we'll shift over to hockey now, or Syracuse ice hockey, because a little record was set at Tennedy Ice Pavilion. today, they just moments ago, SU lost 1-0 to Penn State. Not the season that Syracuse wants from a win-loss perspective, but Allie Kelly, SU's goalie, set the NCAA career saves mark with over 4,135. That's just a remarkable record that she set. And
there's longevity in the pros. In college, it's kind of you just go out there and produce, so that's very impressive.
Yeah, past Lavissa Salander of RPI, who played from 2016 to 2019. And Penn State, good team, SU fell to them, but it was only a 1-0 score, and Kelly had 41 saves and only that one goal allowed. So, kind of carried the team on her back tonight and broke that record in the process. So, good way to kind of cap off the action here tonight on Sports Night by, talking about one of SU's best and giving her some flowers for setting that career mark.
Well, our next broadcast, as we wrap up here on Sports Night, Syracuse men's basketball takes on Notre Dame. Saturday, that's tomorrow, January 18th. The game is at 4. Countdown to tip-off will be at 3:30. And the double overtime will run until 8 p.m. You can tune in with our hosts, Sam Reese and Griffin Marcy. We will be broadcasting the women's basketball game as well versus Boston College. That's Sunday, January 19th. The game will be at noon. Countdown to tip-off at 11:30 and double overtime until 4 p.m. You are listening to WAER Syracuse. Before we wrap up shop here, some thank yous to hand out. Our producer, Nico Horning, our engineer, Adam Gotkin, and the entire WAER Sports Talk Desk team, Dan Papillo and Corey Miller. For Jonah Weintraub and Shrikar Gender, and I say so long and see ya. Thank you for tuning in.